Welcome to Confident Coparenting, building a better life for you and your kids. I'm your host, Jeanne Ward. This show goes beyond co-parenting. It's about self-discovery and personal growth. Separation and divorce can shake your sense of identity, but my goal is to help you feel at ease in your own skin, both as a parent and in your new life. Through engaging conversations, I'll share tips, tools, and mindset shifts to help you build confidence, communicate effectively, and strengthen your self-identity. Let's dive in and see your situation in a new light, because when you thrive, so do your kids. A better future starts now. Confident Co-Parenting on Transformation Talk Radio. The journey to confident co-parenting is one of growth, a lot of self-awareness, and definitely relationship building. Relationship building can be, even with yourself, definitely with your kids, and with your ex or soon-to-be ex. One thing that I haven't talked much about, because I usually work with couples who have made that decision to separate or divorce and then move into that process, as well as working with people who are post-divorce, is what happens if a couple is still together but struggling. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So there is this very amazing, wonderful type of counseling called discernment counseling that is out there. To me, it is like the hidden gem of when couples are struggling. Here in Atlanta, where I'm based and where our guest is based, we have a handful of therapists who do this specific type of counseling. And I'm super excited today that we have one of them here with us, Kathleen Shack. Kathleen, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent. I am too. So for those who don't know what discernment counseling is, I'd love to first start out just kind of talking a little bit about it, because when I first learned about this, I thought, wow. I mean, it just blew my mind, because it is not about the focus of the marriage, right? It's not about working on the marriage. It's about first making a decision of, do we even want to go there? And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I love about it, right? It then helps both parties in the couple come to an agreement of, do we want to work on this or not? So my first question is, do you mind sharing a little bit more about discernment counseling, and then what are those options that couples have when they go into it and come out of it?
Yeah. So discernment counseling is a great process when either one or both people in the relationship are leaning out of the relationship. So if they're at a point where they're considering, should we get separated? Should we get divorced? Should we try to work in couples counseling and work on the relationship? So it's a really good model to use because it's brief, it gets people out of limbo, and the whole process is based on up to 5 sessions. We look at your 3 different paths. So you can maintain status quo and decide later, or you can decide to move towards separation and divorce, or you can decide to move towards couples counseling and agreeing to do 6 months of couples counseling and taking divorce off the table. And so what we do is we have these individual sessions to mainly talk about what are the contributing factors that have gotten the relationship to the point that divorce is an option, and what can each person do to work on themselves, which then in turn could either potentially help the relationship or at least help those individuals in the future, whether or not they're in this current relationship.
Okay. And you mentioned that it's about the couple,
Mm-hmm.
but there's also some individual sessions happening,
Right. And that's
correct?
where it's different from couples counseling. So, couples counseling, I would have a couple come in and they're both gung ho and both feet in, they're ready to do the work. And so, with discernment counseling, we have a different set of clients. So, we have clients where one of them might be gung ho and want to jump in and do the work, and the other
Yeah.
person is leaning out or maybe is on the fence and doesn't want to necessarily save the relationship. And so it's a
Yeah.
unique hybrid where I spend a lot of individual time talking to each person so that I can honor where each of them is coming from. And so the leaning out person can talk freely with me without feeling like they're going to get judgment from their partner or persuasion from their partner that they should be on board with counseling, things like that. So it helps them be able to speak their truth about why they're leaning out. And then I'm able to help then share that with the other partner who's leaning in potentially to be able to say, this was really where this person's coming from. I can help translate some of that. And then I can help them see where they need to also give some space and maybe not be too eager and not push the other person away in terms of how they're behaving. So it's all a balance of
Yes.
supporting each person in the position they're in, but then investigating,
Yeah.
can we get you guys to a place where you would do couples counseling or not? So that's what the big goal is.
Interesting. And are there, or how many sessions are there with both of them together?
So it's up to 5 sessions total because the
Okay.
idea is to get them out of limbo.
Mhm.
And so the way that a session looks is we start with the couple together at the beginning, and I get a lot of history and I ask some questions about how the relationship's gotten to this point. And then we split off into individual time. So each 90-minute session is about 25 minutes with each person individually, with a little bit of shared time in between where they share a summary to each other of what they're thinking about, what they're learning about themselves, about the relationship, if they see hope in terms of moving towards couples counseling or not. And then at the very end, we just meet again to say, do we want to meet again to keep exploring the direction of your relationship? So the
Yeah.
majority of the time is going to be individual time, but then I'm helping them come together and at least give each other little summaries about where they're each at. And so that's different from
Yeah.
couples counseling because otherwise, with couples counseling, I've got them both in the room the whole time and I'm helping them process and figure things out. So this is just a whole different tool to
Yeah.
see if they can do couples counseling.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I'm hearing and wondering is it feels like there would be a lot more authenticity and honesty that is
Mhm.
able to come out in discernment counseling versus it being the couple's, counseling focus. Do you find that that's the case?
I do find that because the model that I use has it where there's confidentiality in the individual appointments that we're having. So I have found that somebody will open up about an affair or somebody will open up about
Yeah.
some other kind of betrayal, financial, whatever it is that's going on.
Yeah.
And they know that they can talk with me about that and we can process what they want to do about it. And that they aren't worried then that I'm going to go run and tell the other person information. So if it's
Yeah.
information that's going to impact the couple's chances at being able to do couples counseling or impact a decision that the other partner would need to make, then I
Yeah.
do encourage them, how do you want to share this with your partner? I'm not going to be the one to share this, but there may be a piece here that you need to share if you guys are planning on moving towards couples counseling. And so we have that different conversation. But while we're meeting individually, they know that they can share whatever their thoughts and feelings are and how they see the relationship, and that I'm
Yeah.
then going to take the information that needs to be shared to help incorporate it and to work with both of them.
Yes. That seems really helpful.
Hmm.
What are the other, or can you highlight any other main differences between the discernment work versus couples work?
I guess a big difference with discernment is we're trying to figure out, do you want to drink the Kool-Aid? So when you come in for couples counseling, you've already decided we want to drink the Kool-Aid. We're here. We
Uh-huh.
like the method you use for couples counseling. With discernment counseling, we're trying to figure out, do you guys even have the bandwidth to do couples counseling? Can you guys see where there's potential for counseling that could happen? So it's really looking at your past and looking at, how did the relationship get to this point? What are the factors that maybe you have considered or haven't considered about how you've both played into the result of where your relationship is right now? So we take a lot of personal inventory. So that's also different from couples counseling because couples counseling is a lot of
Yeah.
systemic work and me helping the couple work on their relationship and their dynamics. Whereas with this work, I'm doing a lot of individual conversation about, okay, how have you contributed to some of these unhealthy patterns that have happened in the relationship? Or where's your piece of what happens in these cycles that you guys get into? And what's work you could be doing, for either this relationship or for a future relationship? But what is work you could individually be doing just to make sure you're bringing the healthiest version of you to whatever relationship you're in? So that's a big
Yeah.
piece of the work. And then they kind of give each other a summary of, here's the stuff I'm learning about myself, or here's the stuff I'm thinking about the relationship, or, I'm now hearing you that when I tend to call you names, that's very offensive to you and has built up a lot of resentment. And I really want to work on that. So then being able to
Yeah.
summarize for each other if we moved into couples counseling, here's what I promise you I'm going to work on, makes a huge difference for future counseling possibilities.
Got it. And are there ever scenarios, have you come across situations where people make that agreement in the discernment work where they
Hmm.
say, okay, I know more about what I'm bringing to the table or not bringing to the table, but I
Hmm.
still want to go forward and let's work on this. And then it may not work out. Does that happen?
It does happen. Yeah. So I think going through the discernment part first, though, gives them a better chance in the couples counseling because oftentimes people come to couples counseling and they know in concept, okay, we want our relationship to work, we want it to be better, but we don't really know what we need to focus on, or it's all the other person's fault. So fix them and we'll be
Uh-huh,
okay.
uh-huh.
So this takes that away because the last session of a discernment counseling process is where I have them both write down an agenda for change. So they both have to
Okay.
write out very detailed individual work they're willing to do so that in the couples counseling that they're saying they're now wanting to sign up for, they then have this list of 4 or 5 things that they're each going to individually be held accountable for and say they're going to work on and make sure that the counseling is focused on those components. So that way, nobody's coming into the counseling blaming the other person or saying it's all their fault. They're recognizing, all right, there's work for each of us to do here, and we're both now going to be invested in doing that work.
Right. Right. And so, yeah, and that's where I think the benefits of the individual conversations are helping, right?
Hmm.
Especially if a person is not doing their own individual work. Because do you find that if people are doing their own work on their own, maybe seeing their own therapist or
Hmm.
doing other things to work on themselves, that they come in with a different approach?
I think so, because they're more able to see a well-rounded picture of how the relationship has gotten to the point that it's feeling unhealthy or not feeling sustainable. So usually if they've been doing some individual counseling, they're able to see that and not be taking the position that it's all the other person's fault.
Yeah.
Um, One thing I do find is if we're doing discernment counseling and we've gotten, 2 or 3 sessions in, and one of the people is just not budging from it, just completely being the other person's fault and not taking their own personal accountability, then, I'll be honest with them and say, I'm worried about you guys prematurely agreeing to couples counseling at this point because I'm not sure it's going to be balanced. I'm not sure you guys are both equally as invested in looking at yourselves and really taking a good inventory of what needs to be worked on. So that's where that first path might be the option of just remaining status quo for now, or potentially doing individual counseling for a bit before you guys then sign up for couples counseling if you guys decide you want to do that. Because for a lot of these couples, this is their last shot at whether or not the relationship's going to work. And so that's where,
Okay.
if they're going to do couples counseling, I want to set them up in the very best possible chance of having that counseling work instead of just
Yes.
going blindly into it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Are there ever scenarios where discernment counseling may not be appropriate?
I think, well, some scenarios where it's not appropriate is if one person has already decided that they're getting divorced. So sometimes what I'll find is people will sign up for it thinking, well, I know I want a divorce, but I want my partner to have support, or I'm going to use this sort of as closure therapy or something. And that is not what discernment counseling is for. So when that happens, I have to walk them back and explain to them this is what this process is for, that there has to be a little bit of hope that things could work out or that you're open to exploring the potential for couples counseling. Because if their hope is not there, then there's no point in us having those conversations. So if
Yeah.
somebody's already determined they are getting divorced and not budging from that, then that's not the right kind of counseling for them.
Yeah.
The other pieces are sometimes there might be an active affair going on, or there might be active substance use going on. So sometimes we can do the discernment work there, but part of what they agree to in that agenda for change towards the end is that they're going to work on that addiction or they're going to work on ending that affair, so it's a piece of what we talk about. So there's things like that that can be worked on. I think if it's an abuse situation, then I don't recommend couples counseling for that. So abuse, I
Okay.
think, is something that's a totally different situation that has to be looked at
Okay.
outside of it.
Good advice. Um, And it sounds like you mentioned at first it can often be, or when I say it, discernment counseling can often be good when one person's leaning in, one's leaning out.
Hmm.
But it sounds like if they're not even leaning, they're just all the way out for
Right.
various reasons, not a good option.
Yeah. And then there's also times where both of them are leaning out. So you could have it where they're both
Interesting.
coming in and saying, we just want to explore this. We heard about this thing that you could help us maybe make sure we're making the right choice before we decide to end things. And so they may both be
Yeah.
leaning out. And so then it's just a matter of helping both of them kind of from the same position, but for maybe different reasons to explore, how have you gotten to this point? And again, looking at personal contributions, making sure they've kind of looked under every rock and turned, over every
Yeah.
stone and made sure they've thought through all of it before deciding what direction they want to go in.
I love that. And that's got me thinking of when they're parents as well, how helpful that's got to be.
Hmm.
Because even if they do end up choosing to separate and divorce, though that knowledge and those conversations have got to be really good when they're co-parenting.
It comes in very handy for co-parenting. And that's one thing we found, because I also work with a lot of divorced families. And one thing we found is if they've gone through the discernment process, they know where their weaknesses are, they know where their strengths are, they already know potentially that they have some communication issues. And so they go into co-parenting and the divorce process often in a healthier place because they are thinking about how they're coming across to each other. They're thinking about trying to keep things balanced and not always blaming the other person for the issues. And
Yeah.
they're looking at how can we just be the healthiest parents that we can be, even if our relationship didn't work out. Because sometimes for people, even though discernment counseling isn't meant as closure therapy, sometimes they get closure through that because they're able to finally just hear each other, slow things down, and really understand where each other's coming from. So then if they decide to
Yeah.
divorce or separate, it's not such a shock. It's not as painful as it potentially could have been if they hadn't had some pretty good in-depth conversations beforehand.
Absolutely. And I find that a lot with my co-parent coaching when I
Mm-hmm.
have both parties together doing the coaching that, like
Mm-hmm.
you said, the slowing everything down, the dissecting it a little bit more, figuring out where are you coming from, where do you both want to be,
Yeah.
as parents, as co-parents, and that can make such a huge difference, a positive
Mm-hmm.
difference.
Yeah.
So excellent. So I'm going to take a little break here because I want to give you the chance of letting our audience know how they can get in touch with you if this is something that they want to explore, or if they just even want to learn more about the other types of services that you provide. So how can
Okay.
someone get in touch with you?
So the best way to get a hold of me is to send me an email or go on my website. So my email is Kathleen at mftga.com. And also my website is mftga.com. So that's the easiest way to find me. You can also look up Family Solutions Counseling Georgia.com, but that's a lot more to type in. So
Uh-huh.
just doing the mftga.com usually works.
Excellent, excellent. And for the audience, I highly recommend they go to your website because you have so much information on there. And
Hmm.
I love the resource page
Oh,
and
good.
that list of books. It is just amazing, the different types of books. And
Hmm.
Kathleen breaks it out into different categories, whether it's for co-parents or self-help or, just all these different categories that help you know exactly what type of book you might want and where to find it. So yeah, so I highly recommend that. Also, if people are interested in, if you want to see more podcasts or if you've missed part of this podcast, you can always go to the Transformation Network on YouTube and watch it. Or you can go to my website, which is confidentcoparenting.com, go to the podcast tab, and you can see or actually hear all the previous recordings on there. So, okay, now getting back to discernment counseling. When a couple comes in to see you, I would imagine there's a lot of assumptions.
Mhm.
Do you see any patterns of assumptions and or kind of, misinterpretation of the of the expectations that they're coming in for?
The expectations for what discernment counseling is that what you mean?
Yeah, and what they might get out of it. Are there any misconceptions of what this is?
Oftentimes there are, and sometimes what'll happen is one person has, say, signed them up for discernment counseling, but maybe not told the other person, or they've
Okay.
just been told, hey, we're going to counseling, and so they don't know what they're showing up for. So a
Yeah.
big piece of discernment counseling is to do a phone call with both parties before actually meeting with them so that I get a chance
Okay.
to talk with them about what the discernment process is, to hear both of them in terms of, are they motivated? Are they leaning in? Are they leaning out? What are they hoping for out of the process? So there's a big screening phone call that happens that helps me explain the process to them, helps me see if they're going to be good candidates for it. Because otherwise, at that phone call, I can just let them know this may not be the best path. Maybe you should try X, Y, or Z. So usually that phone call is good at getting people set up to where they know what they're expecting. Occasionally, I'll have somebody just sign up on my scheduling calendar because it's an online calendar. So I'll occasionally have somebody sign up and they'll just show up and I won't know that's what they're here for. So then we just
Got
start the
it.
process then about talking with, okay, well, here's what you're here for and let's talk about it. Is this what you guys
Yeah.
both want to do? Tell me from each perspective what you guys both want out of the process, things like that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Um, and kind of shifting gears a little bit, a little more about you and of everything that you do, all of the different types of
Mhm.
support that you give your clients. How does discernment counseling fit into that? Is it something that you do a lot and really enjoy? Is it, where is it along amongst the spectrum of everything that you do?
Yeah, so the majority of work I do is with couples. So I'm seeing them either as premarital couples or I'm seeing them as long-term counseling and long-term relationship counseling, or I'm seeing them as potentially being in this place where they're leaning in, leaning out, and trying to decide what to do. Then I also see couples as co-parents and help them transition into divorce. So I kind of see them all along sort of all the life transitions that a couple could potentially go through. So
Yeah.
I think it's great to do the discernment piece because what I was finding is sometimes couples would come in and one would be leaning in and one would be leaning out, and you just can't get anywhere with that dynamic in traditional couples counseling. So there was this
Got
need
it.
for, what do we do with this set of clients that traditional couples therapy is not working for? And I think this was a great way to do that.
Yeah. Is that partly what led you to start this, to put this into your
Mhm.
practice, or was there anything else that led you to it?
No, no, there wasn't anything else. I've just been working with couples for so long and then starting to see this group that couples counseling just wasn't quite working for, or you would lose somebody because one of the people wasn't motivated to be here yet, but the other person was pushing really hard. And so then when I discovered that Bill Doherty, through the Relationship Institute, had invented discernment counseling, then I did all the trainings and got the certification and started seeing clients, and it just grew from there.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so good to know someone who does this because I can't tell you how many people I've spoken to and mention it because it sounds like it might
Hmm.
be the right fit for them. And no one I've spoken to yet has ever heard of it. And I had been doing this
Oh,
work for a little bit before I had even heard of it.
yeah.
So yeah, that's why I say it's like the hidden gem because
Hmm.
it's so beneficial, but no, I don't think, it's definitely not as mainstream as couples work,
Right. Exactly.
you
Yeah.
know?
And one thing we found at the end of discernment is that probably about 47% of people choose to do couples counseling. And then about maybe 40%, maybe 35% choose to still go towards separation or divorce. And then you have like
Okay.
a very smaller subset that decides to just do the status quo. That's not a very popular path, but sometimes they're just not in a place yet to decide what to do and want to think about it more or have different circumstances happening. So that's the
Yeah.
percentages usually of what the paths look like after discernment counseling.
Got it. That's great information. And I love hearing that most people are coming out with a decision of one or
Hmm.
the other, right?
Yeah.
And you can start to have that closure, whether it's okay, we are working on this or
Hmm.
we're working towards divorce. So that's fantastic. And I love that number of couples wanting to work on it is higher.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's really hopeful and wonderful to hear that couples do decide that, they can repair and they can move forward
Right.
together. with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, kind of on that note, and as we're wrapping up, I have one more question for you, which is for a couple who might be in this place of should I stay or should I
Mhm.
go? Maybe we've got the one leaning in, one leaning out. Is there any piece of encouragement or advice that you would give them if when they're at this space or in this space?
I think the most helpful thing to tell people when you're sitting with them in that space is that it's okay to slow things down, and it's okay just to take some time to process the relationship, to process all of their options. They don't have to speed through something, they don't have to make a rash decision. That just slowing things down, taking the time to really think through all the different components of their relationship and of their family system is crucial. So it's okay to slow it down, because if it takes a month to go through a discernment process, if you've been together with somebody for 20 years, a month is just a drop in the ocean. So a month
Right.
really isn't that long to slow it down and just take some time to really think through all of the possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that is a great point, especially when we live in a world that is so fast
Mhm.
and information is coming and going so quickly that it can be really hard to take that pause
Yeah.
in many aspects of our life, especially with our partners. So, yeah, great advice. Thank you. So again, as we're wrapping up, I'd love for you to share again, Kathleen, how people can get in touch with you.
Sure. My email is kathleen@mftga.com, and my website is mftga.com. And I'm always happy to answer emails. So I check those all the time. So I'll be happy to send any information back that you want to know. And then also, I'm licensed in the state of Georgia. So I can work with anybody in the state of Georgia by telehealth or in the office. So whatever works for somebody in the state, then I can work with them.
Wonderful. And yeah, that's great to know. Now, if people are going to come to you in person, they'll be coming into Atlanta.
I'm up in
What part?
Alpharetta. So I'm in
Alpharetta.
Alpharetta, Georgia. Yep.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. And if anybody wants to learn more about myself, my coaching, and again, like I said, listen to this podcast, you can go to confidentcoparenting.com and find all of that there. I, as we close, Kathleen, I just want to thank you so much for sharing
Yeah.
all of this. Like I said, this stuff is so important and not always well known. And so I think it's just such an amazing opportunity for couples to know about if it's something that they
Mhm.
choose to do. And thank you for being here and sharing all of this information with us.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So thank you everyone for listening. I hope this helps. And if it's not for you, maybe it'll help someone that you know. So thanks for getting all the information. And as I always say, take care of yourselves, your kids, and those relationships that mean the most to you. Thanks and have a great day. You've been listening to Confident Coparenting. Join me, Jeanne Ward, every second Wednesday at 12 p.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio for more insights and practical strategies to support your co-parenting journey. Let's keep the conversation going. Connect with me on social media, subscribe to the podcast, and share it with those who could benefit. And if you or someone you know needs support, coaching can make all the difference. Visit confidentcoparenting.com to learn more. See you next time.